Akande joins us this morning, former presidential aide and host of Inside Sources here at Channels. Good morning, thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Timberley.
So we have quite a number of issues that played out, and still playing out this week. Let's start off with the Senate, for instance, where the Senator Ningi is talking about this U.S. strike in Nigeria and procedural matters which they should consider. What's your thought about how this is going on?
Yeah, well, I think that it's a fair request of the National Assembly as a body to be properly briefed about, Nigeria's understanding between Nigeria and the U.S. regarding the airstrike. I think Senator Ningi is right to say that, some of those things ought to include the National Assembly. The National Assembly ought to be carried along. I mean, if you follow the debates even in the U.S., you see that this tension also even exists between the U.S. Congress and the White House on the powers of the president to deploy force, powers of war and stuff like that. So I think it's a reasonable issue that Senator Ningi is tabling to say that, look, you guys need to give us information about this. And I think they are on the right path, I imagine that the Senate President has said that it's a matter that has to be discussed off camera, but certainly, it's something that they should be aware of. I mean, it was a major event, and it had questions around our sovereignty. Even though I personally support us working with the Americans, to help us deal with the terrorists, because we need every help we can get. But I think it's reasonable for the executive to carry along the National Assembly in that matter.
So in that regard, I mean, because chances are that when this kind of matter comes up, you definitely may have certain persons who will say, nope, we do not want the strike to happen, especially if they say, my constituents don't support this kind of strike. And if it gets to that debate and stalls debate, whereas, you have a lot of other people who think this should happen. Isn't that likely going to be some sort of hiccup in the entire matter?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why, so issues of security and intelligence, it's understood that it can be discussed, off camera, in secrecy, so that the sensitivity of it does not get compromised, But I think in terms of determining the national security priorities of the federal government, the executive arm of government does have the highest responsibility for that, so even if people have objections about it, part of the powers that has been conferred on the executive arm of government is to give them the right to do these things on behalf of the people, with the fact that, well, the president was elected by the people, so in his term, he's expected to be doing stuff. That's why there's a lot of public trust. When you are sworn as president or governor, you carry the fact that your people are behind you, they elected you. So that gives you the legitimacy to take these actions. So yes, there may be parts of the country or the state that may not agree with what you are doing. The extent that, you have a constitutional mandate and you have that legitimacy, you can go ahead and do what you believe is right for the country.
When it has to do with security, they always talk about how sensitive these matters are.
Yeah.
So, and then even the security services themselves might think, because that allegation as to perhaps some elements in the army leaking information to Boko Haram terrorists when the U.S. was collaborating with Nigeria some time ago, that might still linger in the mindset of certain people. What do you think the National Assembly or Senate may be comfortable with? Is it for the presidency or executive to them before the action, during the action, or after?
Exactly. Yeah, you're raising very, very sensitive matters, Timberley, because I don't pretend to be an expert myself in managing some of those very sensitive security things, because of the sensitive nature of it. Even in the U.S., like I said, these tensions exist. That you should tell us. The Congress says, let's know what you're going to do before you attack Iraq, before you go and pick Maduro, before you even do all these strikes all over the place. And at times, the executive will say that, look, some of these things you cannot compromise, So at times, some of the things that I've noticed in the U.S. is that just by the time that the thing is happening, before it goes out publicly, before everybody finds out, there's a detachment of information that goes to the U.S. Congress, so that there is not enough time for any potential sabotage. So these are things that have to be sorted out behind the scenes, so that, and you raised a very good point that it had happened before. The Nigerian military was working with the U.S. military, and the U.S. military felt they were betrayed because of information that was leaked. So I think it's just to make it as close as possible, prevent any opportunity for sabotage, but at the same time, bring the National Assembly, at least some of the select intelligence people and the leadership to some kind of confidence.
Ayo.
Well, Mr. Akande, you would be able to relate with this a little more because, I mean, as a former presidential aide and managing communication around such things would definitely be a thing. The trip of the president to the U.S., despite whatever, achievements or pluses or upside it may have, was that just one taint of the president stumbling, and a number of people are making a meal of it, unfortunately. I've also listened to Madam Abike Dabiri, seen in a report crediting, telling us that she was like, look, guys, even the Turkish media is calling our own reaction to our president, in that state, silly. In terms of the communication, I'd like you to speak to it. How would you say the presidency has done with it? What's your measure of how we as a people are reacting to that occurrence?
Yeah, I think that to the extent that everybody is human, even those of us who are younger than the president, we've had instances of slipping here and there, a little stumble here and there. I don't think it's a big deal at all. And I think it depends on the way that we spin this thing. Look, the president stumbled and somebody grabbed him before he got down, and then he's back up again, and he proceeded with every other assignment that he had to do on that day. So it did not affect his schedule. It did not affect what he went to do. He sat through all the meetings, and it seems that everything is looking good. So I don't think we should belabor the issue at all. We should wish the president well. He demonstrated a bit of resilience, by getting up. I'm a pastor in my other vocation, and it says that a righteous man falls down 7 times, but the point is that you got to get up again. The man got up again, and that was good, and we hope that is okay. In terms of the communication, I think I will give credit on that matter to Mr. Ononuga, because he was able to explain that what happened was that the president stepped on a metal object, and so if anybody, stepped on a metal object, you could lose balance even if you are not 70, not talk of somebody in his 70s. So I think that to the extent that Mr. Ononuga was quick to explain that, look, this was what happened, he stepped out of line on a metal object, at which instance he then tripped and stumbled, so I think the communication was fairly managed. The other thing that I would like to say is that, because I have also been in situations where, the principal is out like that, and how the formation of the main body ought to be, there ought to be people in front of the president watching his every step, and I think the ADC was actually the person who grabbed him before he fell. Normally the ADC is supposed to be at the back, but thank goodness he was right there in the front. You could see it. There are people whose job, and I don't want to put them on the spot, there are people whose job is to watch the step of the president. There are people in protocol, there are people in security. The chief security officer is normally at the back, just like with the ADC, but there are people who are supposed to be in the front. Those are the people who should have been aware of every step the president is going to make before he makes it. That's part of their job, especially the people doing protocol. It's part of their job. You should know that this is where the president is going to go. This is where he's going to turn. That is why people are sent on recce ahead of presidential visits. They get to go 3-4 days ahead. They go and meet the host country. They look at the schedule. Where will the president sit? Where will he be walking? Where is he going to make a turn? How everything, they ought to have gone through it completely, totally, so that they're not taken by surprise. And before the president comes, they ought to have seen that the president is going to be going on this track and to be sure that those places are free. So that is the area that I think we need to pay more attention to so that we can avoid, I mean, the thing could have been avoided because if somebody spotted that there's a metal object there, somebody is keeping an eye on the steps of the president, they would have caught it.
Well, we have to leave this other matter. This call for stiffer penalties for vote buying for 2027 election. There's still a lot of time to look at that matter. So we'll definitely catch this one when this one happens much later. So thank you for coming on, Wales. At this point, Lalo Akande.
Thanks so much.